Welcome back to Attitude After Results presented by Teamwork Online and the Clubhouse. Today is a fun one. Today we have our first ever marketing professional on Attitude After Results podcast today. It's a fun one. We're going to talk through some strategies. We're going to get really deep into what it means on the marketing side. Our guest today, Dan LaTorraca, has been with multiple companies on the sports side and has transitioned out of the team side, which I think is always very interesting to understand. Again, for our audience, we're gonna have some people that want to work on the team side, which I think is the fun, the sexy. But we're gonna have some people that don't want to go team side. And so today's conversation is really going to be educational for those looking to get into the industry, but also for those that maybe aren't interested in marketing specifically. You're going to get a new twist on the sports industry from one of the top people in that space. So Dan LaTorraca, welcome to the show.
Oh man, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and excited to have a fun convo about the sports industry and beyond.
I love it. Well, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, your background. Obviously, people can see the LinkedIn, right? I want people to go to LinkedIn. I want people to do a little bit of research. They can see the teams and the places that you've been. But introduce yourself and what you're currently doing. Also, give us a little bit of background on Zoomph as a company.
Yeah. We'll start from the top. I went to undergrad, University of Scranton, which is almost more famous for The Office now than some other things. Went in wanting to be a high school English teacher and always, had that dream of working in sports, but I never thought it was something that was realistic or possible. And then one day, the Yankees moved their AAA team from Columbus, Ohio, to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and I kind of looked at that as a sign, like, hey, it might be cool to do some work with them and maybe see if I can get involved in the industry. And I thought, hey, I could be a sports writer, right? So I dove into that hard and wrote for the city paper, the school paper, a magazine that was at the time owned by Fox Sports, a website, had a blog. Blogs are big back in like 2005. I did a lot of writing, had a lot of bylines to my name. And by the time I graduated, I learned just how difficult it was to get a job in sports media in the New York market, kind of where I grew up. So ended up falling into an advertising role. Digital marketing was obviously getting bigger and bigger late in the 2000s. And my first job was at this small agency that handled SEO, social media marketing. And that kind of gave me my first taste of digital. So did that for several months. And then a bigger agency came along and said, hey, we'll give you a lot more money and we'll let you work with bigger clients. And that was great because I was a 23-year-old kid, just out of college and living in the New York area. And now I had some disposable income. So I used some of my free time to consult for some sports teams on the side to understand, like, hey, I basically do it almost for free. And I want to understand how they operate, what matters to them, what works there. And then, of course, my day job was working on advertising with a big focus on search and social and things like that. And after about a year of that whole process, I had a few job opportunities in front of me with sports teams, just kept applying and working my network. And the one that was the best fit was with the Carolina Panthers, leading their social. And by the time I got down there, I mean, it was my wife and I fell in love with the area. Weren't married yet. We're married later on. But we visited there. We had some family that went to ECU, so we kind of were a little familiar with the area. But look, I love New Jersey. I'm calling in from New Jersey right now, visiting family. But the South is awesome. The warm weather, the friendliness of the people, and a chance to work in the NFL was unbelievable. So we moved down there, and my job expanded pretty quickly out of the gate. It started just to be a focus on social, but it quickly expanded to the mobile app, email marketing, web analytics, all the integrations, working with other departments to make sure that social was supporting them. And I'll admit, man, I didn't know what I was doing at first. I had been on the advertising side. So thankfully I was in a very friendly and understanding environment, and not a lot of other people in the organization sort of knew social either. And at the time, back in like 2011, it was like, hey, do you have a communications degree? Okay, you run social now. And that's really what it was back then. Now we'll get to this. It's like you have teams of 7 or 8 folks that are involved with social. But did that for, several years. But the Panthers kind of built up their strategy. When we started, we were last in the NFL in almost every metric: audience size, engagement. And by the time we got to the 2015 season, we were already ranking much, much higher, but that was the time where the Panthers were kind of made it to the Super Bowl. So the strategy that we built as far as quality over quantity and being more engaging, and there's a bunch of other little pieces to it. We were just the numbers we were putting up were ridiculous. They were just wild. The things we were getting away with in terms of like roasting other teams and all the fun stuff and having personality, and it was rolling really well. In addition to our other digital platforms like the mobile app and email, web, all that fun stuff. So spent 6 seasons with the Carolina Panthers. Got my master's degree while I was there at Canisius University, sports administration, because I wanted to like round out my background in sports. Because I didn't have that type of background there. And then my wife and I were expecting our first child, and we grew up in the New Jersey area. So talked to a few of the teams up there, and one kind of stood out as one I really wanted to work for, which was the Brooklyn Nets. I grew up a New Jersey Nets fan, so it was a great opportunity. So we moved from Charlotte to Brooklyn, had our first kid. It was great. Loved working for the Nets. What I learned was once you live in the South and you move back up north, so it's tough. It's like, oh, winters again. Everything's more expensive. And so we loved it a whole lot. But when the Carolina Hurricanes came calling, it was an instant like, yeah, this is where we want to move back to and raise our family. I didn't think it would happen that soon. I thought we'd have a couple of years enjoying Brooklyn and all that fun stuff.
It always happens sooner than you think.
Exactly.
It always happens sooner than you think.
So, it was an easy decision. Ended up being one of the best career moves I ever could make. So the deal was, my whole career up until that point was focused on digital. At the Panthers, it was social and email and web and everything else like that, content strategy. At BSE Global, it was that, social and web, email, all the integrations across the Nets, the Islanders, Barclays Center. There's a boxing brand in there. And when I got to the Canes, one of the deals was, hey, look, I know I can do a really good job on the digital side. I'm confident. I see what's going on with this team here. I see the potential with new ownership. We're going to get digital in a really good spot. But if you like what you see, I want to expand to traditional marketing and branding as well. And worked out really well. Canes had a great season. We were able to really transform things on the digital and social side. And then my role expanded almost annually after that. First, I inherited the graphic design team, and then it was retail, and then it was all creative services, which was video and photo and motion design in addition to graphics and all the elements that really make up building a brand and having the right resources, not only to support an organization internally, but then also, to build the brand building pieces, the digital pieces, the retail pieces, all those things that engage your audience and generate revenue and whatnot. So spent about 6.5 years there with the Canes, loved it, had a great time. I mean, wasn't always easy. We had the pandemic, which was tough on everybody working in sports, it was tough on everybody in general. And we had some ups and downs, but a lot of fun, and we're able to really kind of transform the perception of a brand of a hockey team in the Southeast. And I know we'll get into the branding pieces later, but it was great. It was awesome. But by the time I got 6.5 years in there, had 3 kids, and I've been doing the sports team thing for almost 15 years. I was tired, man. You've done this for a bunch of years. It's you need a lot of energy to do this, and it's also not an industry that promotes like a healthy lifestyle. So, we had worked with Zoomph at the Canes for a while. Initially, a lot of it was, hey, I don't think we're monetizing our social as best as possible. So first we brought in an agency, and that was okay. And then we brought in actually, we did the whole RFP process, and we initially actually brought in a competitor of Zoomp's, and it just didn't work out at all. And then we brought in Zoomph probably around late 2020. It really was transformative for our social efforts and how we were monetizing and how we were building. And it really helped in a lot of other ways, which we'll get to in a second. But I had become close with a few folks over there because they'd been one of basically our top vendors on the marketing and digital side. And always great people, great product, something I really believed in and got a lot of value out of on the team side. So when an opportunity arose with them to shift into something different, it was a no-brainer for me. I mean, I'd done the sports team thing for a while. And as the sports, working for a team is awesome. It's so much fun. Every day is different. You love what you do. But, you get high up enough, you end up just putting the same fire out again and again and again. And sometimes you don't learn new things for a
Mm.
while. And I kind of felt like I needed a new challenge to do something new and learn some new stuff or make up for things that I hadn't learned in the past couple of years, and wanted to get into a different industry, but also stay connected to sports. So it checked every single box for me. Plus, working remotely, more time with my kids, a little more work-life balance. So it was an easy decision to work for a group that I believe in, a tool I believe in, and people that I really, really like. So been there about 5 months now, and I love it. And a little explainer on what Zoomph is. So Zoomph is a digital SaaS platform that is used by sports teams and leagues, by brands, by agencies, and it does a number of different things. But ultimately, it is a measurement and analytics and reporting tool. So if you are a social media or a digital team, what it does is it'll quickly and organize and make it easy to track and report not only all of your social performance, and your posts and your content, so you can optimize that, but you can also better understand the value it's driving. Social value is a big metric there, which is essentially the advertising equivalency of what a certain post would yield. So
Mm.
you post something on social and it gets 100,000 impressions. The social value, it's more than impressions; it's engagements and views and all these other factors and metrics. Essentially, social value is this is how much you'd have to pay at standard CPM rates to get that same value. So it's great for a social team, not only wanting to understand, hey, this is how we can improve our content. Here's what's working. Here's what's not. But here's the value we're essentially driving, right? In one way. And then there's the brand value piece of it. So Zoomph has this fantastic AI logo detection piece and a bunch of other elements that ultimately will say, hey, we picked up this sponsor logo here in this graphic, in this text mention, in this video. And based on a bunch of different factors, it will ultimately say, this is the value you drove for that partner with that post. So when you want to build a rate card or you want to report on a campaign for a partner, or you want to understand, the value even deeper that you're driving, Zoomph is a great tool because you can know, hey, this is how much these score graphics generated in value for the partner. We could be charging them more, or we're charging them the right amount. They're happy with what we're doing. The tagging system is great too. That takes up so much time. Back in the day at the Panthers, we'd be manually pulling all this stuff. Zoomph automatically categorizes it, tags it for you. So it turns reporting from like a week-long thing for one partner to like 5 minutes, which is great there. So that's just, the social side of it too. And there's benchmarking. I'm sure you remember CrowdTangle. Zoomph essentially has a function that is CrowdTangle on steroids. So you can track and compare how you're performing versus anybody, whether it's a completely different brand or if it's other teams in your same region, if you're Phoenix, all the clubs there. So that's it on the social side, which is incredibly valuable. Brands use it also to say like, hey, we're this massive finance brand, insurance brand, and we invest in 8 different sports teams and 4 different leagues, and they want to be able to quickly track the ROI on their investment too. Well, this helps them do that. So that's where a lot of our brand partners come in too. So Zoomph is essentially in the middle between sports teams and leagues and brands. Agencies kind of fall on both sides. You have agencies that rep teams, you have agencies that rep brands. They use it for reporting as well too. But Zoomph also has broadcast functionality, which, as you know, the landscape of broadcast has changed dramatically over the last couple of years with how RSNs are going. And some of the old legacy platforms, and I dealt with this on my own on the team side, it takes weeks or months to get a report from a single game. Whereas Zoomph can generate, your broadcast report almost, within 24 hours or less, which is great because then you also get the brand value from the partner. So if you have an activation in the broadcast or you're running ads or DEDs on the hockey side, you can get a lot of value out of that. Plus there's some additional deeper audience insight just because Zoomph has a different broadcast methodology than some of the more traditional platforms. Lastly, there's an in-venue piece too where we can measure the value generated by whether it's your sponsored premium section or the sponsored name on the outside of the building. So essentially, it's a tool for measurement and evaluation. So integral for where the sports industry is going and essential for building that bridge between a marketing team or a broadcast team and the sponsorship team. Because ultimately, and you know this, you've worked for a number of teams, yes, goal 1 is to win games. 1A is to make money. And this is what Zoomph essentially does. So I loved it for years. It helped me a lot of different ways. heck, it helped me save jobs and grow our staff by showing the value we were driving. And that's important because you'll talk to anybody that works in the sports industry and they never have enough people. It's always, we would need more staff. We want more staff to be able to do more just because the demand is high. You want to keep kind of going more and more and doing more and more, but you need people to do that. So that's my 10-minute ramble on the past, 15 plus years of my life. But, it's been a fun ride, and I've loved every moment at Zoomph just because I'm learning so many things. But I love the dynamic of kind of working for a tech company that's on the rise.
I love it. Well, if you guys have not heard of marketing strategies or a high level marketing individual speak before, stay with us because Dan is deep in his conversation, is deep in terminology. And some of these that you're talking about now, Dan, I wouldn't have understood the SEOs. I wouldn't have understood the rate cards that you were talking about, the value, right? What's cool for our audience is you guys have an opportunity right now to understand and listen. And maybe you don't understand. However, listening now and understanding, now you can go and hey, after this, if I don't know what rate card is, I'm going to go look it up. If I don't know what SEO is, I'm going to go look that up. If I don't know, what marketing does specifically, I'm going to go look that up. So these are opportunities that everybody now has because of what you're saying to go and educate themselves, to go and get better. One thing that I want to hone in on is this is really exciting for me. Everybody hears the word marketing. What does marketing all entail, right? You have many different departments that you directly affect and that you directly work with. Can you talk to us a little bit about what departments marketing touches and how that affects value for an organization? Because like you said, 1A is driving revenue in organizations.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons I loved working in the digital marketing side is because every other department within a sports organization, almost every department, has to work with you or funnel through you in order to help achieve their goals. So on the ticketing side, sometimes obviously it's the advertising piece with marketing, or it's building the collateral that they'll use for sales enablement. On the sponsorship side, it's working with them to devise inventory, whether it is social or whether it's anything, arena signage, anything that can be sponsored, and kind of executing that community outreach, same kind of thing. They want to be able to tell their story. And marketing's evolved in a way over the last 10, 15 years because of digital, where it's almost become marketing, advertising, PR, communication. It does a lot of everything. So because of that very broad functionality, and when you really get in the weeds too, it gets even deeper with email and SMS and sort of the working closely with the BI team to kind of cultivate audiences and segment and message the right people. That because it's so broad, it's very hectic. There's so many different competing priorities, and you want to make sure that you're helping support everybody internally. But then there's also the most important part, really, which is you want to build the brand, and that's something like engage and attract new fans. You want to be as relevant as possible in your market, potentially nationally, depending on the type of team you work for. And you want to engage the audience you have at a high level. As you know, happiness is good. Happy fans are great. Angry fans still engage, right? Apathy is the enemy when it comes to the sports industry. That's something that we all don't want to happen. So happiness is the best. Anger is second best. It's not good, but it is something that is still measurable and can have its value too, because it shows that they care. And then ultimately, it's generate revenue. And marketing can directly generate revenue, whether it is through advertising. Retail was a big piece for us in the Carolina Hurricanes, and that's something that, with retail being part of our marketing team, allowed us to be a lot more nimble and a lot more strategic with how we aligned our brand and our retail strategy, as well as how we promoted it and engaged our audience with it. And then, of course, you have just the organizational support elements too. And I'm sure you guys are dealing with this right now, or maybe you are soon, of season ticket renewals. That's a big piece of it. I mean, for non-NFL, NFL teams too, for most pro sports teams, the bulk of their revenue comes from season ticket members, and yes, in the NFL, it's a little different because of broadcast rights, but for everybody else, it's ticketing. So marketing plays a crucial role in not only building the assets and the strategies and the advertising elements in order to engage those audiences and help support conversions, but also kind of building the brand. It's not just about asking people to buy tickets or to buy a t-shirt. It's also, you want to create a brand that makes them want to do that. And that's where social and content comes in. That's why it has exploded over the last 10, 15 years, because there's more than just like, hey, this is the local sports team, I'm going to buy a ticket. There is, oh man, I want to be associated with this brand. It speaks to me. It's part of me. It's part of my region. There's levels of pride associated with it and passion that marketing, essentially digital, social, really helps kind of stoke those flames. So when I was at the Canes, the first year was lucky, right? It was the year prior, hell, the 10 years prior were not very good. You know, it was a team in the Southeast. Hockey is still kind of growing in that region, has grown a ton in the last 6 years, but really they weren't competitive for almost a decade. They had a long playoff drought. Things were bad. The new ownership came in and made some changes. You know, you have a head coach who basically was the assistant coach for a while, and he was an organizational hero because he helped win a cup there, was the team captain when the Canes won the cup. He becomes the head coach. Fans love that. They get the second overall pick in the draft. Fans are excited about that. There's a new energy around there. Well, then you have this opportunity to reinvent the brand. And there were some things happening on the ice that helped with that. With the Canes, it was the storm surge, which essentially was, you know, hockey sort of has a reputation for being a more conservative and less emotional sport. Yeah, if someone scores a goal, they celebrate, that's it. But that's kind of where it ended, and that's just the culture of hockey. And baseball has the similarities too. Bat flips have always really angered some of the more older analysts, the more conservative analysts, like, oh, show respect. When, you know, the new generation kind of loves that kind of energy and emotion. It's really attractive. It engages them. It's something that plays well on social, plays well on TV. It's something that you can really relate to. And with the Canes, what they started doing was after wins at home, they would start with just clapping and crashing into the boards, right? And getting fans excited, doing something a little different to just acknowledge the fans. But then it evolved like this crazy snowball into like they wheeled a basketball court or basketball like net onto the ice, and someone slam dunked it. You know, Evander Holyfield comes out and pretends to knock out a player. You know, all this ridiculous stuff. They brought out toy lightsabers and they're fighting, and fans are going nuts for it. And not only that, we're monetizing the heck out of that on social. I mean, with Twitter at the time, or X, you know, whatever you want to call it, had a model that essentially was, if you were whitelisted for it, if you were a large enough account, they would air pre-roll ads before your content and then split the revenue with whichever the account was. And that initially came out around 2015, 2016. Used it at the Nets for a year, and there were no restrictions on it. So it was airing every video monetized, and they made about like 15, 20K off that.
Wow.
Well, that's what I thought. Whoa, right? Then get to the Canes, and we start, monetizing everything within the rules, which was anything outside the game window. So during a game, can't monetize highlights, but after a game, before a game, as long as it's not previously sponsored video, you're good. And these storm surge videos were like gold for that. We would average anywhere between like a couple thousand per, sometimes 5,000-6,000 per video right there. Extrapolate that off over like, 50 wins or 40 wins, whatever it was, the home wins that season. A lot of money right there. I mean, that could almost pay for a staffer right there.
Yep.
Right. So that was big too. But you had this brand that was becoming more fun and more engaging. We had this brand that was becoming more fun and different and bold in hockey. So after that season ended, in the playoffs, which was great because it broke the playoff drought. We had this highly engaged fan base, highly excited, a unique brand, something that was having fun, where it was exciting, it was different, and there was this chip on the shoulder of everybody. It's, hockey shouldn't exist in the Southeast kind of thing. So we ended up taking a look at what our brand was at the time there and kind of redefining the pillars that we wanted it to be. So I got our group together and ended up figuring out what made sense, and what ended up resulting in this big brainstorm session was these 3 very important pillars. And it was bold, which made sense given these storm surges. And there's the whole bunch of jerks story we get into as well. Basically a hockey analyst insulted the team, and I turned it into like a viral t-shirt, and then they made a whole lot of money, and it was like a rallying cry for the audience. But that's bold. And regional, well, I'll get to that one in a second. Fun was the second one. So bold, fun, obviously makes sense. You're doing these post-game celebrations. We're going to be different. We're tailgating. We're being goofy. We're having, fun on Twitter and roasting people and this and that. And then regional to me was the most important, because you're a hockey team in the Southeast, in the Carolinas, you need to weave yourself into the identity of the region and
Mm.
embrace everything that makes Raleigh and the Carolinas unique, whether that is, barbecue or tailgating or college sports fandom or the music of the area, the food of the area, everything you can possibly fold into the brand to make it one with the community. So ultimately, when people like, yeah, they think, hey, I live in the Carolinas. Well, being a Canes fan is part of that, or I live in Raleigh. Being a Canes fan is part of that because it aligns so deeply with the culture of the region. So that was an area where we wanted to look at, and how could we fold that into everything from the beers that we stocked in the arena to our creative of having the state outline or building video content that was very regional focused and really speaking the language of our fans that way was really important, because the fun and the bold stuff that can be like a dozen different teams in the NHL or anywhere really. Like people can do that, but regional, that is so unique to you. So those three things combined, though, are kind of the pillars that we used and the lens that we looked at everything in to build our brand. Whether it was, like I said, T-shirts or branding or anything and everything, that's kind of what we used to really be our North Star in guiding how to build this brand. Now, there's also the technical things that are going on, the advertising, the segmentation, the things that are generating revenue and support. That's fine. But ultimately, all that external stuff had to fit those three pillars. And you can't always do it. There's going to be bad times. There's going to be bad losses or losing streaks, or there's going to be maybe you sign a player that is polarizing to the fan base, whatever. You can't always be those three things, but most of the time you can. And that's how you really, with that commitment and discipline, you build a brand. And that's what we did. And the Canes are still doing now that, I've moved on and stuff too. But that was sort of the foundation we built and capitalized on over 3 years there.
I love that. If I had an opportunity to listen to this when I was younger, I would have just learned so much about the industry specifically and how the organization looks to not only monetize but capture an audience. Because not only is working in sports the cool, the sexy, the logo, right? Like that's awesome. But you have an opportunity, you have a true opportunity to transform locations, transform families, transform people on the individual level. When I think of brands, because marketing, what you guys do is you transcend brands, right? And it's also a cultural icon. Think of a Bulls logo or a Dodgers or a Lakers logo, or the couple that I come, Oakland Raiders maybe, where people can wear those not being a fan of the team, but because that brand means something.
Yep.
Right? Like Chicago Bulls brand means something that isn't basketball. The LA Lakers brand means something that isn't basketball specifically. It's cultural. And it's a really unique opportunity that we have in this industry to push and to create opportunities that are not only within sports specifically, but can be cultural as well. Have you seen in your time with Zoomph, because you guys are a broadcast measurement tool, you guys go through, like you guys are content performance, brand partner evaluation, right? What have you seen transitioning out of the team side that has still been transformative, like you've seen on the team side, right? In those brands, like tell me the difference between the two.
Yeah, one thing it's allowed me to get a deeper understanding of is just what and how other teams are operating and brands, in this social and digital space, and sort of what are the things that are resonating, and and why. And a lot of times, sometimes it can surprise you what you see. Like I'll point to the most valuable social post over the entire NFL season last year. Not counting. I don't know. We haven't met. We have measured the Super Bowl, but I pulled the stat right before the Super Bowl, so maybe something different. But I tend to doubt it because the numbers were so crazy. But it was the Eagles. It was a YouTube short of just an eagle flying around the stadium before a game, and obviously not many teams can are named the Eagles, so can't pull that off because of that. And you have a bunch of different elements there. It was during like a November game too. It wasn't like this was a major matchup, and the way that it traveled on YouTube Shorts specifically, the way it was remixed, the way it was amplified, the social value was ridiculous. It was more than every other social posting by every other team, including the NFL, over the course of a whole season. it generated more views and more impressions, more everything, more social value than anything. And it was just it's a cell phone quality recording of an eagle doing a lap around the stadium. But that's something that clearly resonates, with your own fan base and can somehow gets caught up in the algorithm and travels a whole lot. But people see that and they're thinking, all of a sudden, even for non-Eagles fans, they're seeing something that's Eagles related. So what I'm ultimately getting at here is that you don't have to think about the content piece too hard. You try a bunch of different things, see what sticks. Not everything has to be highly produced, but ultimately you need those things that are going to resonate with your fan base. And that's where those brand pillars come in. And there are some teams that are doing it really, really well. And then also capitalizing on it and monetizing those things properly. That's where Zoomph comes in too. There's other teams that are still trying to figure out the right way to monetize social and to build that content. And some of them are customers, some of them are not. Most of them are not customers because if you're working with Zoomph, you already made that investment. It's something that is going to help you kind of transform and take that next step. But we still see plenty of things. One of the powers of Zoomph is we have benchmarking data, and we're able to see customers, non-customers, who's performing well, who's not, who's sponsoring certain things. And there's still so much opportunity for many, many teams to take that next step and monetize better and build content better that's going to resonate with their audience. So now seeing it at a larger scale, I used to do this a lot more by hand way back in the day when I was the Panthers. I would basically bookmark every pro sports team social account and website. And back then it was just like Facebook, Twitter, Google Plus. Eventually Instagram came around, and then I would multiple times a day, I would look through every social account and be like, all right, what are the Bengals doing? What are the Devils doing? What's everybody doing? And observe it critically. Like, okay, this was a graphic. This was a high-end video. This was a cell phone video. This was just a text post. And look at the responses and the shares and the engagements and go through again and again and again. Was there, what was the message here? Did they use a link, ticketing related, whatever, just everything as comprehensively and deep as possible, just to get a feel for who's doing it well and who's not doing it well. Because then you can cultivate what your best practices are. And you can also see, like, that would be a fit for us. That would not be a fit for us. I can steal that and make it black and blue. Or, that's not going to work. We don't have the resources for that, or we just doesn't fit for our organization. And an eagle flying around the Panther Stadium doesn't really make much sense. Also, wouldn't really let a Panther loose to run around to the national anthem. So not a fit there. But I would do this all the time. And that's really what helped me kind of take that next step from a social strategy standpoint, is to see what others are doing. And then CrowdTangle came along, made it easier. And CrowdTangle didn't exist anymore. And you have platforms like Zoomph that can help with that, make it a lot easier and faster. But truthfully, one of the things that you can do to really, anybody here can do to, if you're interested in working in the social side of the industry, pay close attention to what other teams and leagues are doing. Make that extra effort. Now, if you have, if maybe you work for a college that uses Zoomph, great. You can use the benchmarking tool and evaluate. But if you don't, bookmarking works fine too. Look at everything and really take time, take physical notes, mental notes, whatever. Pay close attention to what everybody's doing, because even now I'm outside the team side. It's helping me get a deeper understanding of what can work, what doesn't, who's crushing it, who's not doing it well. And those are findings that we can take back to other customers to say, hey, like, maybe you should be monetizing this, or you should be increasing the logo size on this graphic, or here's a different way to approach this, or here's what's working, or, hey, here's another vendor you can work with for graphic design work, right? That'll help make your team more efficient, cut down on burnout, and you can monetize it if you do it the right way. So ultimately, it's giving me a deeper understanding of what's working, what's not. As I got higher in the sports industry, at the VP level, I had less time to do that bookmark dance, and now that I'm in a different line of work and I am paying attention to what the WNBA is doing, and the NWSL and MLS and other challenger leagues, like it's giving me a great understanding of where there's opportunity and where the industry might be going in terms of how they staff this stuff and how they build it up. But long rambling answer, that's one of the benefits now.
I love it. I want to take a couple pieces that you've said so far, and I want to take a step back. I enjoy giving actionable steps to our audience. I think it's important. Again, if we haven't heard any of the terms today before, and we're a young college student or a young professional, we're like, okay, cool, that's great. We got all this stuff. Like, how do I get into it, right? So there's a couple things that you've said so far that have caught my attention. One is when you started your career, you were working on sports related content outside of your regular job, right? Like you were doing that on the side. And I think right now, a lot of people are like, oh, cool. Like I scroll Epic Hire, I scroll Teamwork Online, I scroll LinkedIn, and then I press submit on my resume and I don't get any responses. Like, this is ridiculous. It's like, well, you're doing the bare minimum, right? Like, let's go a little bit deeper, right? However, there are some actionable steps from the marketing side specifically.
Yep.
What steps would you take in today's world, a little bit different than when you came into the industry?
Yeah.
What would you be doing in today's world to separate yourself to get into the sports industry specifically?
I'm so glad you asked that because I teach on the side too. I teach a class at Canisius University, and we dedicate.
Yeah, just because you're not busy enough and you're not good at what you're not an expert in every field yet. So let's just add another one.
I mean, that's something I enjoy, a lot, giving back, and every year. Not only that, I get a good ROI on my own education, but it's a great program and one I'm proud to be a part of. But I make sure that we dedicate 2 weeks towards career growth and networking, because I made so many mistakes early in my career in the appropriate way to tackle this stuff that I can share some of these tidbits here. I've got I think what works for me and has worked for a lot of my students and a lot of people that I've talked to over the years kind of boiled down to a couple things that you can do to really set yourself apart and kind of give yourself a leg up if you do want to work for a sports team or a league. So in no particular order, there's, and I hate this one because I'm not good at it, but networking is important. And I hid from that for years. I didn't have any personal social media platforms until 2015. I just went to work at the Panthers, put my head down, tried to do a good job, went home, and that was it. Until a reporter pulled me aside and was like, "You're doing an amazing job. Why? Nobody knows who you are. What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm going to be here for a long time," which was, also another thing to remember. You work in sports. Some people last, and spend a long time at teams. Most people don't. And that's tough because you got to move or whatever. There's so many other factors to it. But I just assumed I'd be there forever, which is wrong. There's other opportunities, life changes, whatever. But networking is number one. Authentic, thoughtful networking. And I'll get to that in a second. But it's very important because one, and you and I both know this, the sports industry is incredibly small. Everybody knows everybody at some level. It's ridiculous. I'm sure if you and I talked offline, there's probably 10 different people that we both know. You and I really haven't talked that much. We've been in slightly different circles, but I promise there are probably a handful of people that that I know just because you've worked at a few different teams. I have. The sports industry is so small. The second thing is oftentimes it doesn't matter what you know, it's who you know. And that kind of goes back to that networking thing and the authentic networking, which we'll go back to. The second bucket is networking, or not networking, is social, kind of building your brand on social. Now, Twitter/X used to be a lot better for this. It's still pretty good. But LinkedIn is really good. You want to build your brand. And by brand, I don't mean having a logo next to your name that's your initials. I mean, you want to ingratiate yourself with the community by engaging with people in a thoughtful way that allows you to sort of build a relationship with them so you can turn them into a network. No different than marketing. That's top of funnel versus middle funnel stuff, right? It's first you start engaging with them, you share some things, you see from the Atlanta Falcons shares the thing on LinkedIn. You're like, oh, this is really cool. Maybe you ask some good questions about it, or you take a note, or in your research you see that the Nashville Predators did X, Y, or Z, and maybe you can talk to them about that at some point. But building your brand is very, very important. And all these things are interconnected. And I'll get to the next one before I tie it all together, is you really need to immerse yourself in the business side of the sports industry. So
that's so good right there.
I mean, I share with my students at the beginning of every semester, here's a list of a bunch of podcasts you should be listening to. Here's a bunch of email newsletters. Bookmark a bunch of these websites. It is so important to begin looking at sports as a business and following it as a business and immersing yourself in that. It's not just kind of what you see on TV. There's so much more, but then also can expand your knowledge of, okay, there's more things you can do in sports than just work for a team or a league. There are agencies, there is sports technology, there are brands that have sports partnership divisions. There are so many different opportunities, college sports, pro, minor league, whatever. But all this sports business news and coverage will tell you like, hey, this is going on with this company. This is a trend. This is someone you should know. So that can factor into the brand that you're building, because all of a sudden you're getting all this knowledge of what's going on in the industry. You can form opinions, you can share things, or you can comment on things or get to know certain people and things to follow. So all of a sudden you're a little more well versed on the RSN landscape and trends in sports partnerships or ticket sales or technology that's being used by teams more often, like Zoomph. And then kind of going back to the networking thing, as you learn more of the people and industries and companies within sports, and as you build your brand authentically and thoughtfully on social, then comes the time for the most important part, which is very, very thoughtful networking. And that is what I mean by thoughtful networking is, you don't want to go into any conversation, you don't want to engage anybody incorrectly with like a transactional approach. Your goal is to build friendships. Your goal is to build something that is authentic and real. And because the industry is so small, you don't need to know everyone. You shouldn't be overly aggressive with this. If every college student or intern that's listening to this right now just dedicated themselves to reaching out to like one person per month that they are inspired by in the industry, as a way to have just sort of a casual conversation with them to learn more about that individual. And after a year, their network is really going to be much deeper than just those 12 individual people. If you do it the right way and thoughtfully and authentically, it's all those people that they know too. So when I say authentically, I mean, if you're going to reach out to somebody, whether you use your alumni network or you just connect with someone on LinkedIn or Twitter and be like, hey, I'm really impressed with the work you're doing. You are amazing, and yeah, butter them up. It does help. I'd love to learn more about you. And then that's when you have your opportunity to share very thoughtful and well-researched questions like, hey, Dan, you did this bunch of jerks campaign. I'd love to hear more about that. Or what are some things you're proud of? What are some things you wish you did differently when you first got into the industry? What are some things that I could do to set myself apart? I get people talking. Ask meaningful, thoughtful, well-researched questions. Treat it like a friendship. Don't ask for a job out of the gate. I've had people call me and be like, hey, the Cade's hiring. And I'll be like, yeah, okay, go to Teamwork Online.
Oh, that's the worst. I hate it. I hate it so much. I hate it so much that in the website that we built, I have to charge people to have conversations now because I get so fed up with it. I'm like, don't come to me asking for a job. Like, I want to help. That is the reason behind this podcast. It's the reason behind the website that we built. Assume positive intent, assume that people want to help, but do not come to me. And Dan, the first time you and I get in a conversation, I come to you and I'm like, hey, Dan, like, you got a job for me? And you're like, I have no idea who you are.
Exactly.
Like, and I don't owe you anything. I want to help, but I don't owe you anything.
Exactly right. And that it's the quickest way to scare someone off. Like, you really want to, look, obviously that person is giving you their time, but you want to be able to ask them really good, thoughtful questions. You want to reach out at the right time too. So in the middle of a home stand or whatever, like, just be thoughtful about, oh, hey, the NFL draft's going on. I'm going to, DM them today. No, you don't want to do that. You want to be thoughtful about when you reach out to them. Come with your questions in mind. Be thoughtful, maybe follow up a month or two later, just check in, or, hey, I really like this thing you guys did. It's amazing. Great job. Treat it like you would any other friendship, and you build it authentically. Don't cast the wide net. This is about a one-to-one thing with like a dozen or so different people. And that way, when you see an opportunity pop up on Teamwork Online, and maybe it's with that person's team or with someone they might know because it came up in conversation, they'll pass your resume along. And that is a great way, in addition to applying on Teamwork Online, to sort of set yourself apart. And again, it's not always who you know, it's what you know. We work a lot of hours in the sports industry. That referral matters because you want to make sure somebody is the right personality, the right attitude to work with. You're spending so much time with them, they need to be. And if they come with the like, hey, my friend has talked to this person a bunch of times, they vouch for them. All of a sudden, when 1,000 people apply for a job, that puts you in maybe that, okay, well, here's the 10 recommended applicants here. It gets you a little bit closer to that interview stage, which then increases your odds. So to kind of summarize it, immerse yourself in the industry, and especially the business side. There's so many good podcasts and email newsletters and websites out there that you can really at least, absorb this stuff, learn it, understand how it all works, not only to see what other opportunities are out there, but just to start, breathing and understanding how things work, why they work the way they do, what the trends are. And then, of course, build your own brand using some of that knowledge, information, and your own stuff too, and your own passions and things that you find interesting. And then as you engage with a community that works in the industry, whether it's marketing or partnerships or communications, community outreach, whatever, identify those people and reach out to them and build a relationship. And I promise you, if you do this the right way, after a year or so, it will work. It has worked for so many of my students. It has worked for a lot of just young people that I've talked to that are recent graduates. Because ultimately, and I'm sure you've been in situations when you've reviewed resumes or you've been hiring people. Going to college matters. All that stuff matters. But the first thing I look at isn't where you went to school. I don't look at the cover letter. I don't look at any of that stuff. I look at what experience do you have? Because to me, that says like, all right, this person was trusted to do something. They have some relevant experience. They know about the ups and downs of working in sports. So that's kind of the fourth piece right there is any experience you can get. If you are working, if you're a college student, get any experience you can with the athletic department. If there is a minor league baseball team near you, like see if they need help, even if it's taking tickets, whatever. That's just another opportunity to gain some relevant experience and grow your network by through your work of like, hey, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to have a good attitude, I'm going to be proactive, all the things that matter. So that's another piece too, because I always look at the experience first. So obviously you got to get that experience, but you do these four things, you will have a job in the sports industry.
No questions asked. The coolest part about this, Dan, I wish that I would have teed you up for those 4 points. I wish we were like, hey, you know what? We both agree. Let's talk about it today. We didn't. And those are the exact 4 points that I would use if asked the exact same question, because it's about who knows you in this industry to give you a reference. It's about who you know that you can go tap into those markets. And transparently, I would go on a limb to say, I'll say for myself first, I have not submitted a resume in this industry that has actually mattered. Because the resume is just an HR, like, check the box, here it is. Absolutely. Right? I would go on a limb, not knowing, to say that you have probably went from the Panthers to BSC to the Hurricanes to Zoomph without going and submitting a resume and being like, please hire me.
Yeah, it's important to have one for emergency cases, but my resume has barely been updated over the last 15 years, and even now I got to get on that. So, and cover letters too, not to diminish the value of them, because there are many industries that probably do value cover letters. I've hired a lot of people over the last 15 years or so. I don't think I've read a cover letter once. Not to say you don't have to do it, because there are cases where you do, but personally, I have not done that. And also not to say that I've only hired people based on referrals. We've been able to find some outstanding people that just apply through Teamwork Online. I mean, I'll call out, there's a digital marketing strategist at the Canes that he came over from the entertainment industry. He was working, for in the theater side of things too. And the impact that individual made on our digital marketing efforts, our segmentation, our strategy around our mobile app and our SM, unbelievable. So that's not to say only like look at the referrals or only look at that. Like you definitely, you want to look at all different types of people, and you also want to embrace diversity and bringing in different types of folks into your team, so you can get different perspectives and experiences and have that fold into, especially on the marketing side, the brand that you do have. But that said, if you're looking at it from a purely numbers standpoint, the four things that we talked about here, they work. So do that, and you will exponentially increase your chances of getting more interviews, of working in the industry, of getting those opportunities. And the sooner you start getting relevant experience, it doesn't matter if you were at a D3 school or a D2 school or D1 school. It doesn't matter if you're volunteering for a wooden bat college baseball league in Rhode Island. Any experience you can get understanding the nuance of the sports industry is so valuable. And that's where it all starts. Do those other things with it. Embrace the industry. You're going to be fine.
I love it. Well, I got one more question for you that I enjoy asking everybody. The name of the podcast is Attitude, Effort, Results. I believe attitude plus effort equals results. Results being very important, but definitely being third on the list. What does your definition of attitude, effort, results, or what does that mean to Dan LaTorraca?
Wow, that's a good one. Should have thought about it beforehand. So To me, attitude, I know if we grew up in the 90s, attitude is a different definition typically than some other folks. But my definition of it in the sports industry side is always going to be that positive attitude. You've done this a long time, man. Yeah, I have too. You understand that there's a lot of BS that you deal with working in sports. There's so much fun with it too, but there are so many headaches. There's egos. There's politics. There's a lot of stuff. You really got to maintain a positive attitude with stuff. You have to be optimistic. You have to be patient. You have to be understanding. You have to roll with stuff. Like, to me, that is what separates a lot of the good from the great people here, is the ones that are not looking for reasons to be negative and are not complaining. Yes, it is normal and natural to complain when things are BS or unfair, whatever. And you're going to come into contact with that a lot in the industry. There's more unfair things than fair things. That doesn't mean you change who you are and how you treat other people. That's something that nobody can take away from you, is the respect and kindness and compassion and empathy that you have for others, as well as sort of how you deal with things. I mean, how we react is one of the great freedoms we have, right? So attitude to me is all those things. It's so important, because those folks that are constantly negative or down, or just like focusing on here's why we can't do this, those are the people not only that I don't want to work with, but I've seen just continue to fail in the industry. And the effort side of things, again, attitude and effort, two things nobody can take away from you. You are in complete control of them. But effort to me, obviously, is the hard work, is putting in the effort. But the most important thing as far as effort, and it takes effort to do this, is being proactive. That is, to me, what really, really separates the good from the great. Because, and I said this before, there is never enough time in the sports industry. It is our greatest resource, because there's so much going on. You're multitasking, crazy stuff. If you can create more time, you're going to be successful. The only way to do that is with proactive planning. Get ahead, okay, and plan ahead. Sports is formulaic. It really is. Like, yes, you don't know what's going to happen on the court or on the ice or on the field. Everything around it is pretty much regimented. So you know what's going to happen, plan accordingly. But then also, when you have opportunities, right? We all have so much going on, especially the higher you go up in the industry. If you have an opportunity to take work off somebody's plate, or to proactively knock out a project or get involved with something, go do it.
Love that.
How you will separate yourself. That is the extra effort you can put in to just to really set yourself apart, to learn, to grow. The people that I've seen grow in this industry versus the people that have just stayed stagnant in their position are the ones that are proactive and go and just like do things. And obviously sometimes you got to ask, like, hey, manager, boss, whatever, can I take this one? And then they'll be like, yes, I need less work. And that is how you set yourself apart. Everybody that has been promoted under me, and everybody that I have promoted over the years, that has been a big reason why, is because they were proactive in their approach. So those two things will get you results big time.
I love it. Well, I appreciate you, Dan. Thank you very much for joining us today. We impacted people today, especially on the marketing side, as you're the first ever marketing professional that we've come on that's come on here. Also, you're one of the top in the entire industry. So we started with a bang. It's going to be hard to follow it up, but I appreciate you. Thank you for valuing your time today with us.
Man, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. And best of luck with everything, and looking forward to staying connected in the future.
I love it. Well, Attitude Effort Results, our website is live, attitudeeffortresults.com. We have a really cool website that has been created, so excited for that. Let's continue to inspire others and grow together.